Okay, go to your kitchen right now. Grab that bottle of extra virgin olive oil sitting on your counter. You know, the one with the nice rustic label, maybe a picture of a Tuscan hillside. Yeah, that one. I hate to be the one to break it to you, but there is a very, very high chance that bottle is a total lie. Like we're talking about one of the biggest frauds in human history, sitting right next to your salt and pepper. See, we think of olive oil as this pure, healthy, ancient superfood, right? But underneath that Made in Italy sticker is a darker story, a story involving organized crime, secret chemical labs, and a multi-billion-dollar underground economy. It's called the Agromafia, and they aren't just selling you bad oil, they're selling you fake oil. And you've been eating it for years and probably didn't even notice. Here's the crazy part. The profit margins on fake olive oil, they can actually be higher than cocaine. I'm not joking. And the best part for the bad guys? If you get caught trafficking drugs, you go to prison for life. If you get caught trafficking fake oil, you get a slap on the wrist and maybe a fine. It is the perfect crime. Low risk, infinite reward. And today, we are going to expose exactly how they pull it off. Some studies, like the famous one from UC Davis, suggested that up to 69% of imported extra virgin olive oil sold in the US didn't meet the standards. 69%! That means when you dip your bread at that fancy Italian chain restaurant, you're basically dipping it into a science experiment. So how did we get here? How did a sacred fruit become the mafia's favorite liquid asset? To understand the crime, we have to understand the victim. We need to go back to when olive oil was actually liquid gold, before the mobsters, the coloring agents, and the deodorizers got involved. We need to look at the rise of the Italian brand and how its own reputation became its downfall. Stick around because by the end of this video, you'll never look at your salad dressing the same way again. Let's wind the clock back, way back. For thousands of years, the olive tree has been the symbol of the Mediterranean. The Romans loved this stuff. They used it for food, for medicine, for fuel, even for perfume. It wasn't just an ingredient, it was currency. If you owned olive trees, you were wealthy. It was hard work, honest work. Now, real, and I mean real extra virgin olive oil is incredibly hard to make. You have to pick the olives at the exact right moment. You can't let them hit the ground or they start to rot immediately. You have to press them within 24 hours. It's a race against time. And the result? It's spicy, peppery, grassy. It actually makes you cough if you swallow it wrong. That cough is actually a sign of quality. It's called pungency. Fast forward to the 20th century. The Mediterranean diet becomes a global phenomenon. Suddenly, doctors are telling everyone, stop eating butter. Eat olive oil. It's good for your heart. Demand skyrocketed. Americans specifically went nuts for it. We wanted that Italian lifestyle. We wanted to be Sophia Loren eating pasta on a balcony. And Italy? They were happy to supply it. But here is the problem, and it's a math problem. Olive trees are stubborn. You can't just 3D print more olives. They take years to grow. They're sensitive to weather. Italy produces a lot of oil, sure, but the world wanted more than Italy could physically grow. So you have a massive demand for Italian oil and a limited supply of actual Italian olives. In any other business, prices would just go up. But in the food world, this is where the magic happens. The brand Made in Italy became the most powerful marketing tool in the food industry. It meant quality. It meant trust. Legitimate family farms, people who had been doing this for generations, built that trust. They poured their blood, sweat, and tears into making the best oil on earth. They created the halo effect. And that halo effect is exactly what the predators were waiting for. This was the golden era for the farmers, but it was also the setup for the fall. The world trusted the label blindly. If it said imported from Italy, we bought it. We didn't ask questions, we didn't check harvest dates, we just poured. And that blind trust, that is exactly where the villain of our story enters the stage. Hey, real quick, before we introduce the villains who ruined your salad, we are a tiny channel trying to uncover the hidden history of the things you use every day. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the financial underworld, do me a massive favor and hit that subscribe button. It helps us afford the real olive oil so we don't get poisoned. Okay, back to the crime. So the EU starts handing out subsidies, free money to support farmers. The more olive trees you had, the more money you got. Can you guess what happened? People started claiming they had trees where they didn't. They created paper farms. But the real money wasn't in fake trees. It was in the oil itself. The gap between what Italy could produce and what the world wanted was now a multi-billion-dollar hole. And nature abhors a vacuum, but the mafia, they love a vacuum. Enter the Agromafia. These aren't just guys breaking kneecaps. These are sophisticated criminal enterprises infiltrating the food supply chain. They realized that while drugs are profitable, everyone is watching for drugs. But who is watching the olive oil tankers? Who is checking the paperwork on a shipment of vegetable oil? Almost no one. They saw the Made in Italy brand not as a promise, but as a mask. The stage was set. You had the desperate demand, you had the trusted brand, and you had a criminal organization with the logistics to move millions of gallons of liquid around the world. The legitimate farmers were about to get squeezed out by an industrial machine that didn't care about flavor or health or tradition. They only cared about volume. The golden era was over. The era of the Franken-oil had begun. And the villain here isn't just a person, it's a process. It's called deodorizing. See, the mafia would import cheap, rotting oil made from olives that had been sitting on the ground for weeks, covered in flies. This stuff is called lampante, lamp oil. It smells like death. It tastes like metal. You couldn't eat it without vomiting. So they take this rotten lamp oil and run it through an industrial refining process. High heat, chemicals. They strip away the smell, the taste, and the color. Now you have a clear, odorless, tasteless fat. It's technically olive oil, but it's dead. It has no nutrients, no antioxidants. It's a ghost. But you can't sell clear oil as extra virgin, right? It needs to look green and grassy. This is where the chemists come in. They take this dead oil, or sometimes they just use cheap soybean or hazelnut oil, and they dress it up. They add chlorophyll to make it green. They add beta-carotene to make it yellow. They mix in just a tiny splash of real high-quality extra virgin olive oil to give it a hint of smell. It's like watering down a bottle of vintage wine with Kool-Aid and selling it for $100. But the biggest scam is the Italian-sounding game. The Agromafia imports tankards of cheap oil from Spain, Greece, Tunisia, places where production is way cheaper. They bring it into an Italian port, bottle it in an Italian factory, and slap a label on it that says, "Packed in Italy," or "Imported from Italy." Notice it doesn't say "grown in Italy." It's a legal loophole big enough to drive a tanker truck through. And here is the missed opportunity, the tragedy of it. The big supermarkets and global buyers, they knew, they had to know. You cannot buy real, labor-intensive extra virgin olive oil for $4 a liter. The math doesn't work. But the retailers wanted low prices, and the consumers, that's us, we didn't know what real oil was supposed to taste like. We got used to the fake stuff. In fact, when people taste real olive oil now, they sometimes think it's gone bad because it's bitter. The villains here cannibalized their own heritage. By flooding the market with fake oil, they drove the price down so low that honest Italian farmers couldn't compete. How can a guy picking olives by hand in Tuscany compete with a criminal syndicate mixing hazelnut oil in a warehouse in Naples? They can't. Legitimate groves were abandoned. The Agromafia wasn't just stealing money, they were destroying Italian culture. But like any good crime drama, the cracks started to show. The sheer scale of the operation made it impossible to hide forever. Investigative journalists like Tom Mueller started poking around. Police started noticing that Italy was exporting way more oil than it was harvesting, like mathematically impossible amounts. The paper mafia, the guys forging the import documents, started to get sloppy. In recent years, the Italian authorities launched massive crackdowns. Operations with names like Mamma Mia, I swear I'm not making that up, seized tons of fake oil. In 2017, they busted a ring exporting fake oil to the US that was just cheap sunflower oil with colorant. They arrested dozens. They seized millions in assets. It was a huge blow to the Agromafia. And thank God they did, because this isn't just about money. It can be deadly. In 1981, in Spain, fraudsters sold industrial rapeseed oil intended for machinery as cooking oil. It killed over 600 people and sickened 20,000. It was known as toxic oil syndrome. While the current Italian fraud is mostly just ripping off your wallet, not killing you, the risk is always there when you let criminals run your food supply. So, the lesson here? If it seems too good to be true, it is. If you see a bottle of Italian extra virgin for $7.99, run away. Real oil is expensive. So how do you protect yourself? Look for a harvest date on the bottle, not a best by date, a harvest date. Look for a specific region, like Sicily or Puglia, not just Italy. And specifically, look for the DOP stamp. That's a certification that is much harder to fake. And finally, taste it. Real oil should smell like grass, tomato leaf, or artichoke. It should be bitter. It should burn the back of your throat. If it tastes like butter or nothing at all, you've been had. Don't let the Agromafia win. Support the real farmers. Buy the good stuff. Your body and your pasta will thank you. The financial history of the world is hidden in the weirdest places, even in your pantry. If you like this story about the greasy side of economics, let me know in the comments. What's the sketchiest food item you've ever bought? I want to hear about it. Don't forget to like, share this with your olive oil-loving friends, and subscribe for more deep dives. Stay curious and check your labels.